A show based on the facts, honesty, the man, the myth, the legend, Constitutionalist Joseph M. Leonard.
Welcome to Constitutionalist Politics Podcast, aka CTP. I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's Leonard. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and an occasional guest type podcast. Really appreciate you tuning in. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Constitutionalist Politics. My guest, Jane Sharp, as opposed to some of the other dull guests. My audience knows I can never pass the lame pun. But it's Sharp with an E on the end. So, of course, check the show notes. That will be in there and all that. But before kicking it off, we spent a good 10 minutes since behind the scenes. We're recording this the day after the election 2024, Wednesday, the 6th of November, 2024. So we had a good rant and rave back. Me mostly doing the ranting. Upset that people can't count votes. And it's because we don't teach basic math anymore in school. It's like they're trying to do Common Core math and can't quite figure it out. But at any rate, we'll get into a little more politics later. First, let's welcome Jane Sharp to the show. Welcome, Jane.
Hello. Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you.
I'm very glad to have you. And just also behind the seats. The minute I hit record, this always happens. The brain in the mouth doesn't want to cooperate. Behind the scenes, I use podcast guest list. I also use Matchmaker FM. We connected through Matchmaker FM. So to most people, they'll be like, what do I care? What are you telling me for? For some, that'll be TMI, and others, that'll be, oh, that's an interesting fact. At any rate, moving on, the usual first question. I like to joke. Cue the who. Who are you? Who, right? Where were you born and raised? Where are you now and all that?
Absolutely. So I was born actually in Washington, D.C. I wasn't born in any state. So when I have to fill out the paperwork, I don't get to put my two letters for my state. I put Washington, D.C. as my district. So I wasn't even born in a state, but I grew up in Maryland. My mom was a postmaster. My dad was a Vietnam veteran. He still is a Vietnam veteran. I grew up, in suburbs in Maryland. And when I was 13, we moved to Central Texas. And that's pretty much where I've been, except for when I was in the Air Force.
Deep in the heart of Texas. Yeah. Can't pass the lame pun. I have a fence issue. Since your dad's a postmaster, maybe he can help me. Bum. It does not matter how lame the pun. I cannot resist. Yes. Again, I don't script shows. I obviously learn a little about the guests, enough to know that I want to have them on. But frankly, I don't want to know a lot about the guests.
It makes it more fun now.
Exactly. What I hit record, whatever rabbit holes open are the ones we go down. I have a general obvious we want to talk about and may as well go to. So there's something I want to talk to you about. But then from there, hey, I discover about you. Yeah. And the audience does kind of the same time. Obviously, I'm learning recording now. They'll hear later. But you know what I mean. They know what I mean. We discover you together.
Yes.
You are here because I saw, and I think you reached out to me rather than me to you. That's regarding your children's book, because as mentioned in the green room, and we'll get into more later, gun rights and gun advocacy. We'll get into that more. But first, the children's book Freedom Baby ABC. What was the genesis, Christian show, pun intended?
I think that's 3 so far. I'm going to start keeping track.
I need a counter in the corner, right? The tally. And also I need a counter in another corner of how many times I now jokingly, knowingly, with malice aforethought, say at any rate as a segue, because I try to cut out and cut down the annoying ahs and ums
Sure.
that are annoying in the podcast. And I started saying at any rate. So now it's an ongoing gag. So at any rate, Freedom Baby ABC, the genesis of that.
Yeah, so it's a children's book. It is a themed alphabet book. There's 26 words in it, one for each of the letters of the alphabet. And I sat down with just a piece of paper. What really started it was I homeschool my children. During that semester, I was bringing my kids to the range every week and teaching, like they had lived in our home, which was definitely believing in the Second Amendment and going to the range. But that semester, I decided to make it consistent and one of our classes that we were taking. So we were really consistently going, and it was on my mind a lot. And I created a list of the 26 words, one for each letter of the alphabet, that were sort of like an introductory primer for gun safety. The vocabulary of guns that people who live a lifestyle using guns, being around guns, teaching their children about freedom and about the actual handling. These are like nouns that we know. You know, we know what a primer is. We know what a clay pigeon is. We know all these different words, but a young child, even growing up in that family, needs to learn all those words. So I created this list. I think there's 7 safety principles, and then the rest is sort of just the nouns and anatomy of guns in general. And so I made that colored alphabet, but the subtitle is From Ammo to X-Ring, and that's so it goes through the whole alphabet. Then I realized colorful, it's bright, it's appealing to young children. If you don't grow up in a Second Amendment loving home and you get introduced to guns later, it would be informative for an older child, you know, like 8 to 10 even, because it's new information for them and it's appealing. But I actually went and created the gun safety activity book later to dive way more in depth with more advanced gun anatomy,
okay,
more advanced.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But
that was later development.
Yeah, this is a perfect example of I see a guest, want to bring them on, and discovering with the audience who you are, what you are about. And indeed, I didn't know that. This is great.
Good. People that see it and hear about it, they just absolutely love it.
Just being in a Second Amendment household when you had kids, that you thought about that educational connection, how to make it easier.
Yes, and appealing and fun and accessible for people with small children, because my kids grew up in this house, but this is something that you can just be sitting on the couch. You don't actually have to have guns out to be teaching your kids these principles.
Probably shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, like, you know, you're going to teach them handling and anatomy and stuff, but
that comes later. Yeah.
This is a great introduction for really little kids. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to be putting a Glock in a 4-year-old's hand.
No.
Yeah. For any reason. That's great. That's wonderful. And, I did an
Uh-oh.
I caught myself. But indeed, demystifying it is the word, I think. That's why I did the I was like, what word am I looking? Yeah. Right. Demystifying, and also making them less of something to be feared, something to understand it and accept it as an appropriate tool when and where it is appropriate to apply it.
Yes. And I also think when you are teaching your kids about guns and you're taking them to the range, you're teaching them how to, you know, disassemble or clean it, or you're actually with weapons, you have to be on your A game. You have to be paying attention. You can't have your phone. You can't have the TV on. Everybody's got to be paying attention. that can be like, I have 5 children. I was taking them to the range. It was once a month for each of them. And for me, it was 1 day a week, every week. But going through a book like this, you don't have to be on your absolute A game. You can be sitting on the couch. The book is open on your lap. Everybody's safe. There doesn't have to be this like intense, this is what we're doing right now. It can be climb up here in your pajamas. You just got out of the bathtub. Let's look through this because this is important. And you can just look through it. It doesn't have to be a big production like it might feel like sometimes to take a kid to the range and introduce them to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad you said range again, because did you see that smirk I gave a little bit while you were like, we don't want them to hurt the deer and the antelope while they're home on the range.
I think that's 4 now. I'm going to start. I need a pen.
Again, even in my Terror Strikes book, there's a comic relief chapter. I like to try to remind and make the point, in case if there's somebody new in the audience listening, you've got to keep a sense of humor.
Sure.
Even lame one like mine, or we'll go crazy.
Yes, if you're not laughing, you're crying. It's much better to be laughing.
Had Bullseye the clown on, about bullying. He became a comic and a clown, as a lot of people go into comedy and that sort of thing as a defense mechanism, disarming somebody through humor. If don't beat on me, I'll make you laugh. Right.
Yeah.
Get that other counter, at any rate, counter going again. So you did mention Gun Safety Activity book.
Right. Yeah.
Close to my heart, because I have several God and Guns episodes, as we discussed in the green room. Reality is, the commandment is thou shalt not murder innocents, because Exodus 22:2 speaks of thief in the night dealt the fatal blow. You're not guilty of murder. Right. You have killed, you have not murdered. It's self-defense.
Yeah.
And that's where the Second Amendment comes in. Now, granted, Exodus 22:2 can apply to your fists, a baseball bat, whatever, but most would have said, there goes my brain and mouth not cooperating again, would associate it with Second Amendment rights, self-defense, because a baseball bat or your fists aren't going to help you if a neighborhood gang comes at you in force.
Yeah, not for more than 1 or 2. And that's too close of quarters for me.
Yeah, that's the other thing with you don't need a 30-round magazine to kill a deer. Hey, morons, that's not what the Second Amendment was about.
Not at all.
It's for when you've got multiples. Now, Exodus 22:2 does not apply if you empty 30 rounds into somebody that's accidentally walked into your house.
For sure.
That goes beyond self-defense. Yeah. So context matters, and I'm betting in Gun Safety Activity book, you deal in a bit of context.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Joseph M. Leonard, host of Constitutionals, taking a brief moment to thank myarchit.com. Together, we share the Christian and family value of honoring family. myarchit.com helps you do that. Preserving family memories online also, therefore, can be shared online. Think of myArchit like a Noah's Ark for images, audio, video, preserving, honoring your family. Thank you again to the folks over at myarchit.com.
For sure. So it's a coloring book and an activity book. The coloring pages, I've taken the 26 images from the Freedom Baby and had them changed into, simple, just blank black and white line drawings to be a coloring book. But then for ammo, for A, there's that image from Freedom Baby. But then there's pages where it goes into like, how does a bullet, like what's the anatomy of a bullet? What's hiding inside that metal case. It talks about, in primers, talks about what happens when a primer goes off, so it's explaining that to you. There, for the letter D, it's called a duty to defend. And it talks about how your home, is your castle, and you have to defend your family. And it has,
And
so
that is very biblical.
for sure. Yeah. Just elaborates there. I talk about knowing what's behind your target, just a lot of different, who in your family takes you to the range, what do you bring with you, just everything from Freedom Baby. But then I expand it a lot for an older crowd who is ready for the next level of intensity of the topic. There'll be like a wooden rifle and then an AR-15 kind of rifle, and it compares because
not one of them medieval
yes, it's the big
AR-15s.
scary black kind of
which
assault weapon.
Yeah,
so,
it does not stand for assault rifle. It's
correct.
Armalite rifle. Yes.
I tell everybody, and a lot of people don't know, especially the people that aren't familiar. So I have two of them on the page, and I'm like, this is a barrel, this is a barrel, this is a stock, this is a stock. These are the same weapons, the same caliber. They just look different, but the anatomy is all the same. So, going through things like that so that they can really understand as much as you can at that level.
I've got a lot of neighbors that they're 30s, 40s, and 50s that need to read your book.
Yes. Well, some of the feedback I get is that adults who look through it, who they purchased it for their grandchild, they're like, oh, I've never seen this laid out so easily, like where it's so easy to understand. So.
And the other thing, well, two things. One, perfect example of me not knowing and just going along down the rabbit hole.
Yep.
This is great. Again, that you turned it into part coloring book, which attracts kids even more to it.
Yes. Good, because, a lot of parents struggle with, get the kids off the screens, get them away from the TV, get them off the gaming system. You can't always take them to the range, but this is at least an activity where they have to turn the page, hold a utensil, have no actual like beeping, flashing input. And it's just a quiet thing. I think a lot of kids need that kind of escape because so much of our life is online now, even for
kids.
Get
them away from the electronics.
For
and
sure.
The other thing, lame puns, and the other thing about the weird way my OCD brain works is you started talking about the jacket. So now I've got Full Metal Jacket movie in my head.
Yeah. Well, Jay is jacketed. So you pinned it.
I knew it related other than just beyond you mentioning that. So indeed, let's talk homeschooling a bit more because I have, Mary Renfro. Oh, I'm not certain. I'm forgetting her first name, but Renfro, a few others that have been on and indeed talked about homeschooling. Behind the scenes, we're recording this the day after the election in November 2024. So this is all fresh here. It will be less related later. And now I'm forgetting where I was going with that.
About homeschooling?
Oh, homeschooling. Yes, I've had several people on parental rights and lack of any choice. Some people wanting, while elected officials send their kids to private school, want to keep your kids dumbed down in the public indoctrination factories, oppose school choice and parental rights to keep them trapped. And homeschooling, for those who can manage it, is a great option.
It's fabulous for the educational aspect. It's fabulous for being in charge of what your child is learning or not learning. If there's things you don't want them exposed to when they're still little, I mean, you can choose your curriculum. You can choose how fast you move through things. If your child has any delays at all, you don't have to put them in a special class. They can still just move at their own pace without the pressure of the peers moving on or being like labeled as some sort of, slow student or bad at math or bad at, whatever. So homeschooling gives you a ton of freedom. And I think that's what you're exactly right. A lot of politicians and the establishment who want, you to pay your taxes and the money to all funnel into schools, they don't want you out in the wilderness on your own, doing it your own way, because every kid that's not in a seat in a school, that's money out of the district's pocket.
Exactly. And I discuss in my Constitutionalist Politics book, school reforms needed, very much like, and you said keep them away from things like sex in grade school, straight or gay, I don't care, doesn't matter, it's not homophobia, it's
appropriate.
inappropriate
Correct.
for those children.
No, it's not appropriate for children like that of that age to even really have an inkling of all that adult stuff at all.
Yeah. And homeschooling, as I discuss in my books, the old R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, history,
actual history.
Yeah,
not rewritten history.
Exactly.
Yes.
Virology and science, I joke, because the kids in school, in the public schools, are too stupid to know an R doesn't belong in there because they're dumbed down. Conversely, the modern leftist garbage, the new core R's, I call them, radicalism, raunch, perversion,
and none of
genderism
in education. That's just, no, it's not what you should be focusing on. I think a lot of things that we should be teaching kids, like cursive and history and civic involvement and spelling and reading, just working on reading. The literacy rate in this country right now, an unbelievable amount, I forget the percentage of adults in this country who have graduated high school are reading at a 5th grade level. And you'll be online and you'll see and you'll say, how can this be? But it's literally, I think they do not have the comprehension of what they're reading. They're picking out certain words and they literally are not grasping the bigger pictures. People do not know how to research anymore. It's just an old school kind of homeschool. We don't research online because you can always very quickly come up to speed on how to use the internet. The thinking process that happens in your brain when you look at a bookshelf full of books and you say, okay, I'm researching, the Upper Kingdom of Egypt. First, I just know I can discard this section on the Revolutionary War. That's not where I'm going to look. I'm going to look, here's the Egypt section of the shelf. And you have to start using your brain before you even start the researching. And so if a kid gets a question and they just type the question into the Google bar and then the answer pops up, they're not researching. They're essentially cheating. There's no thinking happening. The more old school and offline you can do school, the better it is for your child's brain and development and actual learning.
Yeah, you triggered in a good way, not the woke way.
Is that a pun based on my book?
Yeah, it is kind of sort of, but not based on the book, but triggered. Yeah, I didn't even think about the gun angle when I.
Well, I'm looking for puns now. I'm on the watch.
That was an unintentional one in that, but triggered as in not the woke way, but, a thought. You triggered a good thought on, in my CTP2 book, quotations chapter, as a former IT guy, it's mostly, historical quotes from important people, but there's a few Joe originals in there. One being, as an IT guy and talking about Google, never before in the course of human history has so much information and reality and facts and evidence been at someone's fingertips. Conversely, never before in human history has someone had so much access to delusional information to feed a false narrative.
Well, also now with the AI generated answers at the top of your search bar, I have seen multiple articles where they'll type in their question. First comes up the AI results, which are supposed to be like a summary, but then below that is your search results. And a lot of people are getting lazy. They're just reading the AI results. And I'm seeing article after article where people are using those as references. And these studies that are listed in the AI articles aren't even real studies. They're just mimicking the information that they've received as an AI. They're saying, oh, people like to see references. People refer to studies. Schools do studies and they'll reference studies. And then when you look for if someone clicks through to actually, it's not there. It's created by the AI. trained to think we want.
False narratives that they can peddle
And
that
so people
way.
are sharing this, and it's nothing, and there's nothing behind it. It's empty.
Yeah, it's what the left wants, teaching people what to think, not how to think.
Yeah,
And
just parroting.
back to the new core R's, one of them, racism through CRT. After they took To Kill a Mockingbird out of the schools, but
Right.
yet accuse us of wanting to burn books, right?
Yeah.
To Kill a Mockingbird was there to make the stupidity of racism point, but
Yes.
they won't teach it.
They're just checking boxes. They're not actually thinking, I think, a lot of the time.
And the other thing you mentioned, cursive. Oh, absolutely. They don't want that, though. That's why civics, general history, and economics are removed because, as George Carlin used to say, they want people just smart enough to be able to operate the machines, but dumb enough to be told what to think rather than how to think.
Yeah.
And cursive, not having it means they can't read an original or a reproduction of the original Constitution and Declaration of Independence. They can't read it.
Yeah, and then you can print it out, but if you can't compare it to the original, you don't know that it's a faithful reproduction of the original. But they can't read letters. I have a whole folder of letters my husband's grandmother to her older brother when he was in France in the 40s. You can't read those if you can't read cursive. You can't read your grandma's recipe cards that your mom used to value. You can't read letters from your grandma when she sends you a card for your birthday. Like, all that nostalgia aside and that ability to look at the Constitution, your brain is doing very important work when you're moving your arm for writing. So it's another way that the kids' brains are sort of being crippled or handicapped because those pathways aren't being developed. It's not just a pretty way of writing, and it is important to read these old documents, but your brain is developing certain pathways you learn when you do cursive.
This is yet another example. Again, coming across you, I didn't know how politically compatible in most things, at least, we would be.
Yeah.
And indeed, to me, all of this is part of constitutionalist politics, adhering to, like you said, not clinging just to nostalgia on tradition, but common sense, logic, and reasons why those things are still important. Whereas some want to throw everything out, the baby with the bathwater, so to speak, just because that was then, this is now, erasing everything in the past.
The bathwater analogy, just going, technology is helpful, technology is good, online databases are helpful, and now every kid has a laptop and nobody has any paper, nobody has a pencil. There has been study after study that when you are taking notes on a laptop, leaving it through your ears, and it goes through your fingertips so mindlessly that it does not stop in your brain. It goes from your ears to your fingertips. The difference of retention, they've done studies, the difference of retention from writing it longhand notes and note taking, which used to be a class, how to efficiently take notes, not like official shorthand, but just like an efficient method of taking notes in a normal class. My kids are still taking notes. I told my son yesterday, he was reading his history book, and I was like, son, where is your notebook? I'm like, because he's 12. He's just now getting into more in-depth, like more difficult work. And so I'm like, son, I told you, your book is open on the left, your notebook is open on the right, your pen is in your hand. And as you spot information that you've judged is important or indicative of what we're learning, you write it down with your right hand. I'm like, you make the boxes, you draw the arrows, you underline, you change your font that you're writing, but you're reading on the left and you're writing on the right, and you're going through. You don't take notes later. You don't type it. Your brain is not working as efficiently. And they've taken this away from kids in public school, and it's starting to show when we have no comprehension in normal life.
Yeah, exactly. I'm on social media all the time. It's like telling people, you need a reading comprehension 101 course. If you think that's what I said, because that's not what I said, go back and read it again using your brain. Or they're purposely, willfully, and malice aforethought trying to distort the context, create a
Possibly.
straw man of
Yes.
what you said.
Well,
We have
nobody's
that in
learning logic
politics all the
anymore.
time. Yeah, exactly. We could talk for days, which is usually true with all of my guests,
Well,
but
you're choosing them well.
yeah, I like to keep around 30 minutes. So plug in over a lunch hour, go to the diner, order your food, plug in, eat, be done with both your food and the show, pay your bill, get back to work.
It's a nice break.
Let's wrap things up. Do you have a website? Where do people reach out to you? That sort of thing, other than Matchmaker FM.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a Facebook and an Instagram and a Pinterest, of course. They can go see me there and I guess message me if they need to. But I have my website. I just actually got it updated. I had a new book come out last week. And so I've just updated my website. It's janesharp.com, sharp with an E. There's a contact form there. I've written a book about self-publishing for homeschool families. So if somebody was in a self-publishing project and they were interested in their students doing that, I have a whole calendar app where people can have a free half hour discussing their project for self-publishing. So there's a lot of ways to contact me on the website.
Perfect. Jane, an E in there, but no Y, because some put a Y in there. Jane as in C, Dick, Spot, and Jane.
Exactly.
And Sharp, like you said, with an E. I think Shannon Sharp, the football player,
has an E also.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But again, you probably saw me light up in the grin because one of my books is How to Write a Book and Get It Published, Hints, Tips, and Techniques.
I saw that. Yes. Yeah, well, I figured I had written like 12 different books and self-published them, and I had learned so much. And since I'm in the homeschool community and I homeschool, I was like, this is a unit study that homeschool families can totally tackle. And there's so many creative kids with like just words bursting out of their ears and drawings and stuff. So I put it together and I've gotten good feedback. I'm enjoying it.
Well, again, a third time, we're recording the day after election 2024, but this will air sometime into the new year 2025. With that in mind, the book you just released, you said, will be a little older now by the time it happens, but what's the title of that?
It's my first illustrated book with a plot. Like I explained, my alphabet books are themed alphabet books. This is my first book with a plot. It's called Winston the Cat with a Mech Suit. And it's about this lazy cat that's always in his family's way. And then, so like he'll be sleeping in the laundry basket and they can't put the laundry away. Then later they'll be able to do like, their painting project. And he climbs up in his mech suit and he runs the little controllers and he puts the laundry away because earlier he was napping. So it's a silly little book about an orange cat with a big sci-fi suit.
Interesting. There's a market, I would think, for just about anything, right?
Well,
I mean, kids' books, there need to be bazillions of them because parents get tired of reading, read me that one again, read me that. No, how about this one instead?
Yes, and it's before we had cats, we didn't realize. And so then when we got cats for the first time, like in our family, it's legitimately an excuse. If you're laying on the couch and I say, come empty the dishwasher, but there's a cat sleeping on you, we are not disturbing the cat. Like somebody else will have to empty the dishwasher or it will just have to wait because we're not waking up the cat. And so that's where the story came from. We're like, these cats are blocking us at every turn.
Yeah, and a wink and a nod. Many will get this. Just don't let your cats go anywhere near Springfield, Ohio.
Yeah, that's a long walk for us.
Yeah. And most will understand what I'm saying. Some won't. It's not important. Now the election's over. At any rate, indeed, wrapping it up there. Thank you, Jane Sharp, with an E in Jane and an E on the end of Sharp. No Y in Jane. Thank you for your time. I greatly appreciated having you here.
I have had a lot of fun. I think we only got 5 puns, maybe 4. So
certainly not my record.
You'll have to get a Post-it and start keeping track.
Yeah, it won't be the record for the number of puns in a given show. All right, take care. God bless. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for having tuned in for Constitutionalist Politics Show. If you haven't already, Please check out my primary internationally available book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you. Available anywhere books are sold. If you have locally run bookstores still near you, they can order it for you. And let me remind, over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a very appreciated listener by me. All substance, no fluff, just straight to key discussion points. A show that looks at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Take care. God bless. Like and subscribe to Constitutionalist Politics Podcast and share episodes. We need your help.
Wham Radio, 1600 AM and 92.7 FM is your conservative flamethrower. Weekdays, Steve Gruber starts things off at 6 a.m. Gruber gives his perspective on the issues of the day. At 9 a.m., Glenn Beck blazes the airwaves with his nationally syndicated program. From noon to 3, it's Dennis Prager. At 3 o'clock, it's Wham's own Thayrone X. On the Edge, Thayrone tells it exactly as he sees it. At 6, it's The Dana Show, your conservative alternative. At 8, don't miss Joe Pags. Weekends are filled with conservative talk as well. Fingers Malloy, Thomas LeDuc, The Abolitionists Roundtable, A Moment of Clarity with Pastor Rick, Your American Heritage with Ed Bondarenka, Dave Janda's Operation Freedom, and Dick Kupke's Trigger Talk. You can even get links to Wham podcasts from Dave, Dick, and of course Thayrone, all from their pages on our website, whamradio.com. Keep it locked on Wham Radio, 1600 AM and 92.7 FM in southeastern Michigan, and whamradio.com anywhere in the world.